Hey guys, so I'm really sorry that I didn't post this yesterday. As I said in my email, I was covering classes for the Tutster and I was unable to record any of my lectures. So if you are in school today, then you do not need to watch this video because you will be receiving this lecture live during fourth period. But if you are quarantined, then this video is for you to help you with your assignment for tonight. So let's get started. We have talked about classical conditioning thus far, and classical conditioning is the process in which you are pairing an unconditioned stimulus with a neutral stimulus. And through training, that once neutral stimulus will become your conditioned stimulus, and it will produce a predictable response, which is your conditioned response. Operant conditioning is a little bit different, and that is our topic for today. So operant conditioning occurs when you want to either increase or decrease a certain behavior. And you will do so by either reinforcing to increase or punishing to decrease. So reinforcement is a stimulus that will always increase the likelihood that a behavior will be repeated. And there are many different types of reinforcements that we encounter in our everyday lives. So for example, if you are in class and you make a joke and everybody laughs, that laughter is the reinforcement that you would need to then make more jokes. It would increase your behavior. Now, reinforcement has the ability to be either positive or negative. When we say positive or negative within the realm of operant conditioning, it means you are either adding or subtracting. So positive reinforcement occurs when you are adding a reward to increase the likelihood that that behavior will occur again. Negative reinforcement means that you are taking away something that is painful or unpleasant in order to increase the likelihood that a behavior would occur again. So one of the most famous examples of operant conditioning is B.F. Skinner's box, his rat box. He calls it the Skinner box. Essentially, the Skinner box is a small box that has levers in it. And on the bottom of the box is a floor that buzzes. So it's like a small electrical current. And he put a rat inside the box. And the rat could pull the lever and food would come out for it. Or the rat could pull the lever and the buzzing, the zapping on the floor would stop. So in both cases, the rat is encouraged to pull the lever because he can either add a treat or take away the buzzing on the bottom of the floor that is causing him pain. So this is an example of reinforcement, okay? He is being added or subtracted something. B.F. Skinner is one of the more famous psychologists within the realm of behavioralism, and he is known for refining the idea of law of effect. And the law of effect simply states that any sort of response that gives you a positive or satisfying situation means that you're going to do it. And if responses that are unpleasant or annoying, they will be less likely to be repeated. So this is how we understand operant conditioning as a whole. If something is unpleasant, you're not going to want to do it again. But if you get rewarded for a behavior, you will be very much likely to repeat that behavior in the future. Now, within the realm of operant conditioning, we have different types of reinforcement. A primary reinforcer is one that is naturally rewarding to us. It is going to serve or satisfy some sort of biological need that we have. So like food that nourishes you, water that quenches your thirst, sleep that satisfies exhaustion. But then we also have secondary reinforcers. And these are items or symbols or objects that later become associated with a primary reinforcer. So for example, money itself is just paper and coins, and it doesn't really have any meaning to us. But we know that we can buy things with money, therefore it has value to us. You can buy food, you can buy clothes, you can buy a home. There's a really famous experiment that they did with monkeys in which they had a machine in a room, and the machine, when you put a token in it, would dispense a banana. And so what the monkeys really want is the banana. It's their primary reinforcer. It's going to satisfy a biological need. Now, a token itself doesn't mean anything to a monkey. They don't care about a token. It has no meaning. But the monkeys knew that when they took a token and put it in the machine, they would get a banana. Therefore, the tokens started to acquire value for them, and pretty soon the monkeys were actually fighting over tokens. Therefore, in that particular circumstance, the token was the secondary reinforcer. Now, if reinforcement is going to increase the likelihood that a behavior will occur again, punishment is going to decrease a behavior. So, if we are looking at punishment, it is very similar to reinforcement, except that it is switched around. So, just like we had positive and negative, meaning you are adding something or taking something away, the same is true for punishment. You can either add an unpleasant stimulus or you can take away a pleasant stimulus. They are literally just flip-flopped around. So if we were to look at this idea as a whole on a chart, you can see that positive and negative simply means adding or subtracting. So for reinforcement, if you want to increase a behavior, you will add a pleasant stimulus or you will decrease something unpleasant. And for punishment, if you want to decrease a behavior, you will add an unpleasant stimulus or you will remove a pleasant stimulus. So an example for punishment would be, let's say I have a student in my classroom that talks a lot. Now, I want him to talk less. So I could add a detention, or I could remove his ability to sit by friends. That is the removal of a pleasant stimulus. And in both cases, whether I am adding something or subtracting something, it is likely to decrease the behavior that is bothering me. Are we all on the same page now? Now, when we're looking at operant conditioning, it's important to understand that the timing and frequency of reinforcement is an important factor in conditioning. So a continuous schedule occurs when a behavior is reinforced every single time it occurs. So, for example, if every single time the rat pulled the lever, he received a treat. Every single time a student raises their hand, they get a piece of candy. That sort of idea. That is a continuous schedule. But continuous schedules are not the only schedules that occur. We also are aware of something that is called a partial schedule. And this is when reinforcement is never really known. We never know when it's going to happen. Okay, it's intermittent. Now, behaviors tend to be learned more slowly if you use partial schedules, but it tends to be a more lasting effect because the reward is so unpredictable. So, for example, if I'm training my dog to sit and he gets a treat every single time he sits, eventually, if I try to get him to sit without giving him a treat enough times, he's just not going to sit anymore because he's going to be like, I'm not going to get anything for this. But if I give him a treat every few times he sits, he's more likely to sit down when I ask him to because he doesn't really know if the treat's coming or not, and he's going to figure it's worth a chance. One of the most famous or well-known examples of a partial schedule of reinforcement would be slot machines. See, people never know when they're going to get a reward. They never know when they're going to win. So they keep playing and playing and playing because the feeling of, oh, maybe this is the next time, maybe it's this time, is so addictive to people. Now, rewards on a partial schedule can either be based on the number of correct responses or the amount of time. And either way, it can either be a fixed schedule or a variable schedule. So if we're thinking about something like every 2 weeks, I receive a paycheck. Well, that would be an example of a fixed interval because it is fixed. It is every 2 weeks. And we know that it's an interval because it is based on the amount of time. A different example would be, I'm going fishing, and every so often I catch a fish. Well, it is a variable because every so often I don't really know when it's going to happen. And that is also a ratio because it is not based on any specific amount of time. It's when am I going to catch a fish? Does that make sense? So this is a chart that just gives you a brief overview of the fixed, variable, ratio, and interval elements of schedules of reinforcement. Now within operant conditioning, it's going to get a little tricky because you're going to be able to explain to me whether or not something is a positive reinforcement, a negative reinforcement, a positive punishment, a negative punishment. And then you're going to need to be able to explain to me whether or not a scenario is depicting what type of schedule of reinforcement it is. So there's a lot to practice within this particular unit, and I really encourage you guys to stay on top of it. So for today's homework, you will see that I posted a series of scenarios in which you have to explain to me what type of operant conditioning is occurring. Is it a positive reinforcement, a negative reinforcement, a positive punishment, or a negative punishment? We are going to worry about the schedules more tomorrow. So don't really worry about that right now, but please try to review it and watch that portion of this video again if you're having trouble with it. But for now, I want you to try the homework out and we will talk about the answers tomorrow. See you guys later.